Hello, everyone, and welcome to Petite to Queen's Claim Your Career Crown podcast. I'm your host, Lynn, and today I'm joined by our VP of Operations, Amanda, and our special guest, Thom King. So, you know what? Today is going to be such a great conversation because we're going to be talking about how entrepreneurs build a better business, and we're going to start with that simple question that I love, which is why. And so what we're going to do today with Thom. Thom's an entrepreneur. He's an author. He's a self-described biohacker. And he's made it his life work to study food science and use his knowledge to help people. In fact, we had this great conversation before we ever got started. For those of you who don't recognize Thom's name, he's best known, maybe best known, right now, today, soon, as the founder and CEO of Steviva, one of the largest importers, manufacturers, and distributors of clean label sweetening systems and natural sweeteners. So Thom founded Steviva as a way to effectively help combat metabolic disease and the diabesity. And that's, Thom, that's your self-coined term. So this is an epidemic in our country. And he also, by offering these clean label sweetening systems, he can replace sucrose and high fructose corn syrup. Ultimately, Thom's goal is to develop an online learning center to share his knowledge and fortune by establishing a foundation dedicated to supporting entrepreneurs engaged in new advances in dietary health and wellness. Wow, what a bio, Thom. Thank you so much for coming on. We're thrilled to have you here.
Well, thank you, Lynn and Amanda. It's great to be hosted on your podcast, and I hope that I can live up to that introduction.
Well, I think this is going to be a great show. And for everybody who's joining us for the first time, make sure you take that moment right now and hit subscribe to claim your career crown wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're at it, share the love and click all 5 stars for our review. Okay, now that my shameless pitch is out of the way, Thom, let's go ahead and talk about this because you're a serial entrepreneur, and I find that so fascinating. And you started your business, many businesses, including Steviva, and you started by asking yourself why. So I'm always so fascinated because in sales, you always have to start with the client why. So in this, it's taking it that other step. The business is the why. So can you, in your words, explain why this simple question is so important to ask yourself when developing a business?
I mean, I think that it's important, anytime you're starting anything. I mean, whether it's a business or, getting up off the couch and going somewhere, you ask yourself the reason why, and really dig into it. I would say that, Lynn, when you said that, you ask your, prospects why, or train salespeople, to ask why. I think that when, like I've had several businesses, and some of them were a little bizarre. Like they would probably freak you out a little bit. But, I think as I matured as an entrepreneur, I mean, I would say that when I started being an entrepreneur, I was more like money focused and monetarily focused. And I think as I matured as an entrepreneur, that why became a lot more important. Like it really meant like the why, how I will make the world a better place through what I do. Instead of just, hey, how am I going to make a lot of money? And maybe my why is going to be, I'm going to get rich. But those are slippery slopes. And I think that a lot of people that go after money, without a why, without trying to make, the world a better place, or at least make improvements. If they do get that money becomes very heavy. It can weight you down and, and define you. And I think that if you look, on social media, on some of the people that have scads and scads of money, you can see how it defines them. So yeah, if you're an entrepreneur, ask yourself why and how. How will this make the world a better place?
Yeah. No, I mean that's a big thing. In fact, we actually have is the how do we help the world? I mean that is so important because it really makes you a whole person and it feeds your soul. And of course, if you make money along the way, I mean we all have bills to pay, etc. But it
Hmm.
just really changes your focus, and you can really pour your joy and your passion into what you're doing.
Yeah, and with the ingredient company that I started Steviva in 1999, and really the genesis of that was when I was living in Arizona. I ran into uh, a guy who's pretty idiosyncratic who'd just come back from Paraguay with these jars of various herbs, and he asked me to try one of them, and so I tried it. It was this green paste, and it was probably 25 times sweeter than sugar. And I I was kind of shocked by it because I'm like, well, how does this taste sweet without having any sugar? And that was like, for me taking the red pill because I just like went right down the rabbit hole of like, what is this? Is this chemistry, some kind of interesting thing? And I mean, that was the stevia leaf. And when I really started breaking down the chemistry of it, um, I saw this opportunity to actually be the natural version of NutraSweet because NutraSweet was the sweetener of choice then, and I saw that opportunity. And but more, it was more than just, hey, this is going to make me a lot of money and bring me a lot of success, but it was really about like the side effects of NutraSweet, like causing early onset Parkinson's and stuff like that. And I felt like having a natural sweetener that everybody could consume safely, that wasn't a processed chemical, um, made the world a better place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a really powerful message to work towards making the world a better place and not just doing something to get rich quick. Um, you've said that your business isn't simply something that you do for a living, it's a testament to who you are and how you live your life. How do you enact this belief in your day-to-day work and in larger projects?
Um, that's a really good question. I mean, in the day to day workings of my business, and what's interesting is like I'm the CEO of Icon Foods, and so that's my CEO role, and and I have the side hustles, the guy on keto side hustles, but the rewarding side of like being a CEO, and quite honestly, um, I don't really enjoy being a CEO. Like I'm an entrepreneur, and being an entrepreneur means that you're creating, that you're
Mhm.
creating something new. But what I had to learn, in the CEO role is leadership, right? Like I had to really develop my leadership skills, and in part of being a leader, part of leading a company like that is being able to empower your people,
Yeah.
and that is what gave me a lot of satisfaction out of being a CEO. Like, do I like the job? I don't really like it, but the rewards that I get, the non-monetary rewards that I get when I hire somebody and I see them come into my company one way and just blossom and grow and become these amazing, successful individuals. That is honestly most rewarding part of my business, by far.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's so true. I mean, when you create that culture and environment, that's one of the most important things you can do so everyone can thrive within that organization. So I'm so excited that you talked about that, Tom. And I think let's sort of flip over to maybe the dark side of common mistakes
Okay.
that people make when they're starting a business. I mean, I can tell you I've certainly made them, but how can we avoid them? I mean, what do you see is out there? Um, how do we fix things once we've made one of those mistakes? I know I'm a real believer in the power of choice that we can choose to follow a new path and
Mm-hmm.
and to gain what we learn from it. But what's your take on this?
Um, well, I would say from my perspective, there are no mistakes, right? They're just only opportunities because, like, when I look at the times when I've screwed up the most is when I learned the most, you know? And so I would say if, to your audience, if you're an entrepreneur and you're starting a business, I mean, the biggest mistake that you could make is to give up.
Yeah.
That's that's your biggest mistake. And not all your ideas are going to be great, and not all my ideas are great. Like I would say that 90% of my ideas are pretty crappy. But the 10% that aren't make up for the 90% that are by far. And so I would say as an entrepreneur, just don't give up. Pivot if you need to pivot. But don't ever give up, and have a plan, right? And so if you can create a plan, and I'm big on writing things down and making plans. Like if you can, if you have an outcome, right? An outcome that you want to achieve. Let's say you're starting a company that makes toothbrushes, right? And the outcome that you're looking for is to manufacture a toothbrush that makes people want to brush their teeth longer. And and the outcome is everybody gets better dental health. Everybody lives longer because poor health starts in the mouth. So when you look at that outcome, it's like, okay, so how am I going to get there? I'm going to hire an engineer, I'm going to hire a scientist, I'm going to do this. And you do all of these things, and that's your plan, that's your action plan. And so you've got your outcome, you've got your action plan, and then let go of your expectation, right? Just let go of your expectation and fall in love with the process, right? The process is your action plan. And then revisit the data, do your data collection, like how many toothbrushes did we sell? Did we get one designed? Like revisit your data like once a week. And if you're not getting closer to your outcome, then just simply nudge your action plan, and then the next week re-examine your results. And
Yeah.
I think that where people get discouraged and they want to give up, is when they have expectations, right? Like they expect to sell 10 million toothbrushes, their first week, and they don't sell 10 million toothbrushes, and they're like, I'm a failure, I totally failed, I had this expectation. It's like, no, 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 no. Stick with what's true, your action plan, and let the results manifest.
No,
And that's so true.
yeah, that's great
Yeah,
advice, Thom.
it is. And I like what you're saying about how that there are no mistakes, because even if something doesn't work out for you, you can learn from that and grow from that and use that experience to pivot or fine tune how you do things. And so I think um, it's important to make those mistakes as you are on your journey towards being an entrepreneur.
Yeah,
A
nobody,
hundred
no,
percent. But like what you said, Lynn, though, is it's a choice, right?
yeah,
Because there's
Mhm.
people that are going to make mistakes, and they're going to see those as mistakes, right? They're not going to see them as opportunities to learn, and and that is a choice. So you could either choose to look at that as a mistake, if you want to call it that. If you could choose to look at it as a mistake and a failure, or if you choose to look at it as an opportunity to learn and grow, and become more courageous because you made it through. And honestly, like, when I journal, and when I'm going through my gratitude process, I'm certainly grateful for all my experiences and opportunities and adventures that I've had. But the real meat, the real juicy parts of it are are the experiences that are painful and and embarrassing and challenging, because those are the ones that it's like, well, I'll never do that again. And those are the ones that really advance you.
Yeah,
it's true.
and I feel like talking a little bit about mindsets here. Can you share some of the key habits and mindsets that entrepreneurs need to be successful, and maybe share how we how we can cultivate these ways of being along the way?
As an entrepreneur, I mean, you have to have a growth mindset, right? I mean, because that's the only way you're going to be a success. if you don't have a growth oriented mindset where you don't see things in a optimistic fashion, those are the things that are going to drag you down. And I don't. I wake up in bad moods. I wake up in like feeling like a failure, or just feeling dumb, or I mean, I get the same feelings that everybody else gets. I mean, maybe worse than most people, but I think the thing that I found that helps me the most on being able to set the stage for my day, if you will, and really create a masterpiece out of it. I think the thing that has helped me enormously, and it's something I do every single day, is journaling. Um, I fill up an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper every single day, and and I've turned a bunch of people on to journaling, and the first thing that I get from them is, "What do you do with that paper? How do you start writing? What do you do?" And I'm like, ask yourself a question and keep asking yourself questions. Like ask yourself a question: what am I grateful for? What am I willing to let go of that's holding me back? Um, what can I do better? How can I restrain myself from, bad habits? Or what do I want today to look like? And what am I going to do today that I didn't do yesterday? And what steps am I going to take to get me closer to, various outcomes that I'm looking for? And I think that if you start asking yourself those questions, that a full sheet of paper won't be enough for you. Like you're just going to start writing, and out of it is it's going to basically be your foundation for your day. It's like, now I know where I'm going with this now, and your mindset is clear. And and I always finish up my journaling with an affirmation, like a breathing affirmation, like with every breath I take in, with every breath I draw, I attract wisdom, courage, resilience, determination. And with each exhale, I lovingly let go of the things that no longer serve me, like bad habits and, um, not listening enough.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot about the power of journaling lately. I feel like it's something that's kind of gotten on a greater scale recently. But it's a skill, I think, and kind of like meditation. Like it sounds like it would be easy to just sit down and meditate or journal, but I think it does take a little bit of practice and like knowing like the questions to ask, which you kind of um, helped guide people with some questions to start with. So that's helpful.
Well, when you say the word habit, that's exactly, what it is, and
Mhm.
your habits are going to form, I mean, really the trajectory of your life, because the habits are choices that you make, and your life is guided by your choices. So, and it's not always easy. Like I don't always sit in front of a sheet of paper and the words just, literally flow from the pen. There's days when I struggle, right? But those days that I struggle, those are the ones that it's like, yeah, you have to push. You have to keep making those words. And I think that that's the case with just about everything, like discipline is discipline is the key. Having the discipline to get up early in the morning, having the discipline to say no to the things that you want to do, but that aren't good for you. And sometimes even the discipline to say no to somebody, because you're overstretched and you've got too much
Yeah.
on your plate. So those are all choices.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. We have
totally.
so many choices all day long. And of course, we're recording this at sort of at the end of the day when we get into that decision fatigue moment. But um, we always have the choice to actually make a new decision and to try something new. And
Mm-hmm.
to your point of making a new habit, sometimes it's just a matter of retraining our brain. I like to think of to be a learn it all, right? And I know that I had a guest introduce us to affirmations about 3 years ago, and I still use them. I use them every day, and I found them really useful. So I'm really excited to hear your advice on journaling. Um, that's also, I mean, it's a great idea and how to, you know, um, really sort of let your mind explore. Taking that, it's really giving yourself a gift, some time for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say it's the greatest gift of self-care that you can, that you can give yourself. Because, I mean, when you look at the things in life that are super generous, like one of the most generous things a person can give to another person is just listening.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
so when you're able to actively listen to yourself, that is an amazing act of self-love, and with self-love comes self-confidence, and with self-confidence comes courage. So set time aside for yourself, right? Like, I could work 24/7 if I wanted to, but I don't do it. Like in the morning, it's like, look, I don't want any calls. I don't want anything disturbing me for the first couple hours in the morning, because that's my time. That's my time of self-love, of working out, of meditating, of journaling, of spending time with my dog, and and reflecting. And
Yeah.
so if you're an entrepreneur, work-life balance is key, and also self-care. Use those first 2 hours in the morning. If you have to get up a little earlier, do it, but use those first 2 hours in the morning specifically to practice self-care.
Yeah, definitely. That's great advice too. Um, in your work, you refer to catalysts and exponential growth points for businesses. How can we recognize these catalysts and where can they lead us? And if you don't mind sharing, what are some of your catalysts over the years?
You know what? That's an excellent question. I mean, for me, is a catalyst is having a plan, right? Like,
Yeah.
having a catalyst is having a plan that gets you from point A to point B. And once you have that plan and you move from point A to point B, what happens is momentum, right? And momentum also determines trajectory. And so uh, some of my catalysts are dividing my departments up. Like, my my company, like operations and procurement and R&D. I mean, there's a lot of, and sales. There's a lot of facets to the company, and creating those catalysts is, you know for me, is creating a plan and having those plans hinged on KPIs, like key performance indicators of, like, are we getting from point A to point B? Are we getting, from point B to point C? So those those two things, I would say, are my biggest catalysts that I use.
Yeah. No, no, that's great. I think that I really appreciate your sharing that, because when we are in that place, so that you can build on that momentum, and to your point of key performance indicators are vital, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, to be watching
Mhm.
your progress, and then to know when things, maybe they're a little off track or they're just not quite working. So
Mhm.
that you can either work within a department or also have several departments that where things are interconnected, um, so that so that you can make some adjustments. That's
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and having, the interconnectivity, like, between your departments and stuff like that, I think is key. And I would have to say that, that my food ingredient company, Icon Foods, is enjoying a lot of success because of that, of sort of the interconnectivity between department heads and also employees. Um, when you create a collaborative
Yeah.
environment, where everybody has an equal voice, um, they tend to weave into each other, and you get cohesiveness.
Yeah. Well, and ideas can come from somebody in a different department or a
Oh,
different role who's looking at it
yes,
a very different way. And what's interesting
yes.
also about Icon is because you bring clients into that collaboration
Mhm.
of you have something that they manufacture, but they want to change it so that it can be a clean label. They
Mhm.
want to make it better. They want to give their customers a better experience and better health. And so then that's the same thing. It's like, okay, how you're also bringing in those outside voices
Mhm.
as well. And I
Yep.
think when we expand that and really that paradigm and all the different input, it can that diversity of thought that you create is really can
Mhm.
be such a motivator and can drive that momentum that you were talking about.
Well, it can save you a crap load of money too,
Yeah.
and it can, because when I thought about all of the times that I've had guys back in production, and in our warehouse, um, that, I mean, we give a monetary reward to the winner of the best idea for the month every month, and so it's amazing because some of the folks that are working out back see things that nobody else sees, right? They
Yeah.
see workarounds and stuff like that, and some of the best ideas have come from those folks. Like, hey, if we rearrange our warehouse this way, it could be more efficient. And I just look at it and I'm like, yeah, that's true. Why didn't I think of that? It's like brilliant. And so I think that it's important, to do a lot more listening, when you're in the role of a CEO or an entrepreneur, because man, that's where you get those nuggets. You got somebody that you don't expect to be able to tell you anything new. All of a sudden, you know, you get a major wake up call. Like what? And yeah, so constantly listen to your employees.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's such an important aspect too. I mean, when we were talking about leadership, um, is that rejecting complacency. I just that idea that, okay, things are good, let's just go with the flow. Instead, always, sort of striving. Obviously, the world changes and it's constantly changing around us. But that idea of, rejecting the complacency, I think is so important for entrepreneurial spirit and to have that imbued within the whole organization. Because, we're just, it's not like I want to keep moving the goal line. But we can keep celebrating the wins, but it just means we get to have more celebrations.
Yeah, uh, I think getting comfortable is deadly. And I mean, from my perspective, I think you should get comfortable with being uncomfortable
Yeah.
as an entrepreneur. Like I always like to feel just a little uncomfortable. Like in a room, I like it to be just a little bit cold or something like that. Something that always kind of keeps me kind of off balance a little bit. Because I think that when people tend to get, overly comfortable and and complacent, that's when your competition comes in and cleans you out.
Yeah.
Oh, I think that is so true. And Tom, I've just so enjoyed your sharing your knowledge and wisdom. Really, as
Thank
we're
you.
looking to help guide, I mean, your goal,
Mhm.
your big thing, to inspire new entrepreneurs. And
Mhm.
so I'm sort of curious, who are some of your role models and what lessons did you either learn directly from them or indirectly, that you might want to share?
Um, yeah, well, I'm a fifth generation entrepreneur. So
Wow.
I learned quite a few things from my grandfather, um, and a lot of things also from, from my father. And um, I would have to say probably not things that I would repeat. So I would say that I learned from their mistakes, but I would also say that it was my grandfather on my mom's side who really taught me, taught me the right things, right? I mean, because he was probably the best man I ever met in my life. Like he was honest, he had amazing integrity, um, he was comfortable in sharing his feelings, he was a great listener, and I think that that was my greatest mentor. And I think that those values that he taught me were more important than any of the values that I picked up from my grandfather on my other side of the family and my father, about, you know, stomping out the competition and, making your employees work until their fingers are bleeding and just my style is a lot different than that. But, you take the good and learn from it, and you learn even more from the bad.
Yeah, well, I think it definitely is a combination of the two. I was really fortunate that my greatest mentor was my dad. But it was the same thing. It was that he had that generosity of spirit as well, and that honesty and integrity. And yes, he wanted to make money. He wanted the company to do well, but he wanted everybody to thrive. And it
Mm.
was never about him, you know. He just got to ride the wave when everyone else was riding the wave with him. So that's such a it's just amazing how transformative that can be when it's someone that's that close to you and personal in that sense as your grandfather to be your mentor.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, this is Thom. Thank you so much. This has been such a great conversation, and I know we
Of course.
sort of went a lot of different places today, and really talking about that why. I think we did come back to that
Mm.
why, even when we ended with your
Hmm.
grandfather about leading a business to success
Hmm.
and having it be more meaningful for everyone, not just for the people you serve in the sense of your clients or the customers, but the people within the organization. I am sure that our listeners would want to know more about how they can find out more about you.
Well, my side hustle is called Gaigon Keto, and if you want to find out more about that, I would go to gaigonketo.com or hit me up on any of the socials, Gaigon Keto. And if you want to see like the mad science behind what I do, you can go to iconfoods.com. But any of the socials, you can find me on LinkedIn. You feel free to drop me a DM. I'll get back to you.
Well, that's wonderful. And we'll be sure to include those links in the show. And just for everybody out there, I'm really excited if you do go to the stevia.com. They have some great recipes. I mean, I've already picked one that I'm going to be making for tonight. I told Thom about that. I was pretty excited. I love to cook. Anybody who listens knows
Awesome.
that. Amanda and her husband love to cook. So, Thom, Amanda, this has been such a great discussion. And for our audience out there, if you have ideas that you'd like to share, please share them in our comment section. We love hearing from you. Or if you have a topic or some kind of suggestion that you'd like to send us, you can email us at jointheconversation@petitequeen.com. And of course, to stay current on all of the resources that we provide, the articles, and the wonderful shows like today's. You can sign up for our weekly wisdoms newsletter at petitequeen.com. Thom, Amanda, thank you so much for today. It's been amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. I appreciate it.